just imagine, in somehow you appear in the same room as Vladimir Putin, but you can't do anything to him, right? Physically or anything like that. What question would you ask him? Just like one question. What do you think you would ask him? What is up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new video. And in a matter of fact, it's actually my first podcast that I'm doing right now with our guest, the biggest guest on this channel with 400,000 subscribers. That's him right here, Operator Starsky. What is up?
Hello, bro. What's up with you?
Not much, not much. Glad to see you on the channel. You're the first. You know what? I want to start podcasting, and this is probably going to be the worst podcast in the history of podcasts. So you're the first one to actually be in the worst podcast ever created. How do you feel about that?
Feeling absolutely great, considering that I am the one invited. I guarantee that it will be the worst. But anyways,
Can you explain to everybody who are you? Because a lot of people watch you, watch me, they probably know you, but some people probably have no idea. They're probably sitting around and thinking, who is this guy? Why does he have a microphone with a Ukrainian flag? And what is he doing with a Russian guy in a podcast? This is what's really interesting to start off. So who are you? Please explain.
well, officially, I'm an agent of a Ukrainian security service recruiting a Russian spy right now. But frankly speaking, I'm a Ukrainian YouTuber. I'm a former Ukrainian National Guardsman, 9 years at the front line since 2015, late 2014, actually. And currently, I'm running the Propaganda Study Institute, which is a small voluntary organization dedicated to fighting Kremlin misinformation. And not only Kremlin, we have a lot of bad guys out there: China, Iran, Syria, and other guys. And it's a big pleasure to be here today at your podcast because, generally, since 2022, when Russian invasion of Ukraine started, a lot of my viewers asked me to have a stream with or invite a Russian blogger. And I checked Russian bloggers, like literally they suck. They all suck. That's why instead of them, I would rather invite somebody else, which I did. Until I saw your videos where you were explaining how things are in Russia for real. And you have my trust. You have my
Thank you.
trust, man. So generally, I'm very, very glad to be here today. I hope that your viewers will like this as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They probably would love it. And by the way, guys, before we get into it, make sure to check out Operator Starsky. The links are going to be in the description as always. He's a legend. You know what? The stuff I record is mostly about what's going on inside of Russia. But Starsky right here, he records more of what's going on in Ukraine. So it's nice to see both sides, I think. It's a great balance, don't you think?
I think it's a great balance considering that it's both proper sides. Not the Russian
The Americans
bullshit.
talking about Ukraine and Russia. This is like
Yeah,
insider information, right?
yeah, and two things. First thing is you're not a Z-generate. You're not this Z-patriot or whatever they call themselves. Those
Oh yeah, thank God.
motherfuckers. Yeah, and another thing, you're not what is considered, like Russian opposition,
Oh yeah.
sitting in Amsterdam, like you're a Russian dude and like you're a proper dude, which I respect, and I think a
Thank
lot
you
of my
very
viewers
much.
respect as well.
Thank you. So let's actually get into some backstories, because we'll get more into all of the Ukrainian situation, which probably a lot of people are interested in, obviously, because it's a very important, question and an answer that probably a lot of people want to hear. But I want to start from the beginning. Where did you grow up in Ukraine? So you're from Ukraine. You were born in Ukraine, right?
Yeah. Have you been to Ukraine, by the way?
Actually, I wanted to go there because when I was a little kid, I watched a lot of like when vlogging was very popular. Most of the vloggers I watched were actually from Ukraine, funnily enough. So I actually wanted to go there, but unfortunately, I don't think I really have a chance right now, you know?
Do you know Ptushkin, by the way?
Tushkin. Yeah, I do. Yeah, he was in a TV show where they traveled around the place, right? It was called Arol
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Reshka.
He's my good friend, by the way.
Oh,
I
really?
will,
Wow.
yeah, I will pass him greetings. I grew up mostly in Kiev, but being a military brat, it's really hard to tell where I come from because my father had to travel a lot in the Soviet times, and I had to travel like together with my father
Yeah.
as his kid. That's why we've been to such places as the Чернігівська область, Гончарівське, Лубни, what else? Кривий Ріг, but mostly Kiev. Later, my father moved to Kiev. Again, it sucks because, and I think that other military brats will understand me, because you have to go to a different school every single time, meet new friends, forget about your old friends. So it kind of sucks on one hand. On the other hand, it's kind of interesting. I was born like factically in Kryvyi Rih. It's where Zelensky was born, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but
So you're his neighbor.
kind of.
Kind of. Yeah.
My grandma was, but
wow.
But officially, in all the documents, my place of birth is like Honcharivsky, because when I was born there, they refused to register my place of birth. They said, go back to Honcharivsky because your your division is stationed there. So this is why I have like mixed up like past. But Kiev is what I consider my hometown. There's a lot of friends, a lot of memories, a lot of places I personally love. And one of the coolest place to me personally is Pechersk. It's Kiev downtown. When Russians come to Kiev and they don't know how, like they want to visit like Pecherska Lavra, they don't know how to spell it properly. That's why they say Pechorskaya, because they think that it's spelled like yo, but it's Pechersk. So that's a really cool place. There's my university, the Kiev National University of Culture and Arts, where I studied communications and public relations in the Institute of Socio-Cultural Studies. Graduated back in 2006, and that's something that is very, very dear to me, that very place.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. So from my understanding is your family has also military background, right?
Yeah, my father does. My father was
see.
military. He was a company commander in a tank division, armored division back in the days.
So does this go in your family back and back, or did it start from your father, the whole military, thing?
It
obviously
like it
your grandparents probably were. What was it? Your grandparents or great grandparents that was probably in the Second World War, right?
My grandpa was also a tanker, and he was in the World War. It's not like we like this stuff.
Yeah, just the way life took it, right?
Yeah, I don't consider myself like a fan of military lifestyle, even though I had to do it for quite a while, almost 10 years of my life. But I joined the military when the war began in my country, when Putin annexed Crimea, and
this was then 2014, right?
Yeah, brought the war to Donbass as well. Same with my grandpa, who had to volunteer and he volunteered before he became an adult, which wasn't legal, but he lied again about his age. So they accepted them into a school for tankers
Oh wow.
back in those days, in 1945.
Wow. You know what's actually very interesting? My great grandfather was also in the Second World War, and he was actually a tank mechanic. Could you imagine this? So you never know. Maybe
Yeah,
my great grandfather fixed your grandfather's tank. You never know. It could have been
yeah.
like that. So it's interesting the way, it was all uh, you know, so many of the Russian and Ukrainian relatives. I know this is taking it far, but during the Second World War, everybody was, fighting against the bad thing, which was fascism, obviously. But we're gonna get there's so many hot topics about all of this that I want to ask you, and it's interesting to hear your opinion about it because you're from Ukraine, I'm from Russia. I obviously get a lot of the Z propaganda type of stuff, and it's actually interesting to hear your opinion. But before we get into all of that craziness, I want to know, how do you know English? Like, where did you learn it? Was it from games, university, school, or?
I literally had my first computer in 1996, and my first, maybe earlier, but my first internet emerged in 1996. And instead of getting registered at all kinds of, Big Mirnet and Gala chat and whatever, I downloaded ICQ and I randomly searched for friends. I was like 14.
Oh wow.
No, wait. I was like 11. And I found a lot of friends all over the world. And they, like, of course, we spoke English. And this is how I learned, actually. But you probably know this, like, old educational cartoon for kids who want to learn English language called Muzzy. It's a cartoon about this big green hairy alien who eats clocks, and it's made specifically so kids could learn English.
Oh, I
And
never
it
heard of it.
was, yeah, it was my favorite movie when I was like 6, and
Oh,
it also helped.
so you
Where
were
did you
learning
learn
from.
English, by the way?
So you were learning just like learning from speaking to some online friends, and then from cartoons, and you just learned it yourself, and maybe a bit in school or something like that, right? So you were just kind of getting better at it because your English is very good, considering that you right. So you lived in Ukraine most of your life. You didn't like fly around the place, right? You were there all the time, and that's how. And you learned your English there.
Yeah, not in the past 9 years, because past 9 years that I served, I could not travel at all.
Yeah,
The only foreign place I've been to in those years was like Poland, like very close,
yeah, yeah.
once. And generally 9 years I couldn't travel much. When you serve, you don't have personal life at all. My personal life was fucked big time as well. Um, and I learned basically in Ukraine. One thing that helps big time, it's for those who want to learn a foreign language, is watching movies in that language. I watched Friends when I started like learning seriously. I downloaded all the episodes of Friends, and what's even most important, I downloaded all the episodes of Sex and the City,
Oh yeah.
and this was my favorite show like forever, it's the best. Why this one is because generally they talk like they talk in the real life mostly in this very show, and it helped big time. That's why if you want to learn a foreign language, watch movies in that language.
Wow, that's actually really great advice. That's actually really interesting. And it everybody knows you from this side because if you look at your YouTube channel, you're that military guy, doing military stuff, and then you talk about military stuff on your YouTube channel, which in most cases I'm one of those people. I'm not a big military guy at all whatsoever. I have no idea. if I look at a tank, I don't know if it's a T-70 whatever, T-90 something, whatever. I have no idea. But what's interesting to me is, what was your first job? Do you remember your first job? Like first job when you were like 18 or something, I don't know, or 16.
I was a journalist. I was a
Really?
journalist, yeah, in a newspaper. I was like 18. And I worked in this newspaper in Kiev. It was kind of cool. Um, didn't last long though. Later, I went to other places like projects of the United States Agency for International Development, the
Oh
World
wow.
Bank. Those are like big international organizations with staff all over the world, with thousands of people working for them. And that was another reason why I could improve my English. But my first place was I was a journalist.
That's actually interesting because if you look at yourself now from your first job to the job you're doing, I'm assuming YouTube is what you do for a living now, right? Or do you do
Yeah,
something? Yeah, so basically you're doing journalist work again. So you kind of made a big way back into the journalism world. That's pretty cool. Um, you know what's also interesting? So, were you in the military, right? I'm just jumping across topics here. Were you in the military before 2014? Or were you doing some other job and then you decided to go there? What was your life around 2013 up to when 2014 happened, with Lugansk, Donbass, Crimea?
I worked at the television, the TV channel Ukraine. I worked as a creative manager, TV channel Ukraine, TV channel Football, even though I
Oh,
don't like football, not a fan, but I worked there as well. And then revolution in Ukraine happened. And after this revolution, I didn't have other choice but to tie my life with the military. But before that, I was a completely civilian dude. The only thing that connected me with military life was weapons. I like to shoot. I often visited like shooting range in my place, in my area. Um, like that stuff I like. I like shooting. I like weapons. Um, I did boxing, I did kickboxing, and I also had a metal band. We were performing several
wow.
times in Kiev. So I was basically a civilian dude. And
Yeah.
I only went to the first, it was the battalion of police that was involved in the anti-terrorist operation in Donbass in 2014, late 2014, early 2015. So
Oh, so you
before
were
that, yeah,
working as
I was a
a policeman.
yeah, in the beginning, I joined police forces because it was anti-terrorist operation, and logically, this is what the police should do. Police should fight terrorists.
Yeah.
Uh, like later, of course, all kinds of heavy weaponry were involved, multiple launch rocket systems, tanks, etc., army. But generally, it was a work for a cop. So I even worked as a cop for a while,
Wow.
and after that, I went to the National Guard and became a military.
Okay, let's take a pause right here. This is interesting. So you were a cop for a little while, right? And what were you doing as a cop in Ukraine? Like, what was your? Because this is interesting. What was your day-to-day routine kind of thing? So imagine this: you have a time machine back. You're back at that time, and you're a cop. Did you eat donuts, or did you? What did you do? Were you running around the place, spying on people, or what was the story about that?
So we had a battalion that was made out of former policemen uh, and like volunteers. So
Yeah.
basically, it was a battalion formed from people who fought during the Revolution of Dignity on different sides of the barricades. So there were cops who fought against the protesters, and there were protesters that were fighting against those cops. So this battalion was formed from those people.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really, really exciting time of my life, because we had a lot of interesting training in terms of CQB, in terms of operational work. I'm not sure how to call it, оперативная работа.
Yeah, operation
We
work.
had a lot of different deployments to the Donbass, places like Mariinka, Kurachovo, Krasnohorivka, my God, Verkhnya Toretsky, Pisky, the Donetsk airport, the famous place. I was like stationed several hundred meters from it one time.
Oh, wow.
The usual day depended on where we were, because if we were on a deployment, for example, in Mariinka or Krasnohorovka, then I would wake up, we would go on a patrol, we would have a briefing before the patrol. For example, there were places we had to check regarding possible reconnaissance and sabotage groups that could infiltrate the area. Several people that had to be checked, because we had different functions. We had to conduct filtration activities, which is basically checking people coming from the occupied territories to the controlled territory, check their cars, check their documents and the background so they don't carry weapons. And we found a lot of interesting stuff. At some point, of course, we had to not only check the documents and the databases, but I also had this small group that was responsible for back in those days, the term all-sint was not as popular, but that's basically what we did. So when there was a suspicious person, we would conduct a short all-sint on this person and check out whether he or she is or was connected to Russians or separatists, or things like that. So as a result of my work there, we arrested several former terrorists. We found a dude from Russia who lived in Krasnohorivka since 2018 without any documents.
Oh, wow.
And he was also involved in terrorist activities. He was reporting to the terrorists in Donetsk about the military, like their whereabouts. And also, besides all the counter-terrorist activities, we also were involved in protecting different strategic objects in Kyiv, around Kyiv, not only in Kyiv, of course, but we were the Kyiv battalion. We were called Kyiv 1.
So it wasn't the typical police type of stuff. It was more lean towards the military, kind of, right?
The counterterrorism, basically. And and also we were used to patrol again different areas during mass actions, during all kinds of stuff. Also, because when you are a policeman, you don't have specific timetable.
Yeah.
Neither did I. So I lost my personal life when I became a cop, but there were a lot of really, really cool episodes. There was this moment I returned from a shift in the morning, and I was sitting outside my house smoking, wearing shorts, wearing some shirt, and there were two teenagers sitting on the bench in front of me, and I was drinking some energy drink, smoking, surfing my phone, and those guys were also smoking and surfing, watching something on the phone. And then I think I gotta buy another energy drink. So I go to the grocery store, not far from me. And when I return, I hear scream, some shouting, some fight. And what I see is there's a different bench, and on this bench there's a girl and a guy, basically like a couple, and they're fighting, and they're fighting really bad.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, oh shit. So I go home, I take off my clothes, I wear my uniform, I walk out of house, and the teenagers that were like with their phone, they're like, the fuck is that? And I go to that couple and I'm like, guys, are you okay? And they see me and they're like, yeah, we are fine. And they hug and everything else. I'm like, no problem. They're like, no problem. So I return back. I take off my uniform. I wear my clothes back. I walk out of the house with an energy drink. And the teenagers are like, what the fuck is that?
Just getting undressed and dressed back.
Yeah, so this is how оборотни в погонах work in real
Yeah.
life. The werewolves in the uniforms, and sometimes you had to do such things because when you're a cop, you are obliged to help other people and keep order in order, to serve and to protect 24/7.
Yeah. So, did you ever encounter back then some, because you were in those areas, right? Donbass, Lugansk, right? Did you encounter people who were really pro-Russian, or the ones that didn't say maybe that they were pro-Russian, but they're like, we want our republic to be a republic not connected to Ukraine? Have you encountered those people, and what was their points of views? Because this is interesting.
My closest neighbor was a completely pro-Russian fuck. Literally, he was a former military, but he was, my God, he was like, I was born in the Soviet Union. That type of guy.
Yeah.
It was so irritating. And of course, he watched all kinds of like Russia Today,
Yeah.
Sputnik. I tried to kind of influence him, but it was really, really hard. He was like, like this convinced Z whatever. But I think that something changed when Russian missile hit a factory not far from our house, like 300 meters away. So I think that it kind of changed his mind a bit. Yeah, a lot of people that were, I would say, not really pro-Russian, but rather pro-Russian, or rather like neutral. They didn't care. A lot of them changed their minds very, very fast as soon as Kiev and other cities in Ukraine became targets for Russian ballistic missiles, different gliding bombs, cruise missiles, etc. And for example, if you take such cities as Odessa, that was very tolerant, very much loyal to Russian people in general, nowadays they hate them so much. They literally hate them, everyone.
So it's kind of what is kind of happening in Russia right now, in a sense that a lot of people in the in the bordering regions, when the war started and all that stuff, they were like, oh, it's somewhere far away, we don't really care. But when it got close to them, that's when they're like, what is going on? It's kind of the same. And this is the way humans kind of work. If it's somewhere far away there, it doesn't concern me. Who cares about it? But when it comes close to your house, that's when people start panicking, and it's already too late to do anything about it, right?
Yeah, sometimes, unfortunately, we have to learn things the hard way.
Yeah.
And there's no other way. I remember 2014, everybody in Ukraine were scared because we lost Crimea, we have a hybrid invasion in Donbass, the war, the mobilization. 2015, 90% of people that lived on the peaceful territory, they already didn't care much because they have their peaceful life back. whatever happens 700 kilometers away from Kiev, like tanks,
Yeah.
artillery strikes, snipers, all that shit that we faced, they didn't see that, which on one hand, I believe, was our big achievement as militaries, because our people didn't have to see all that. They had peaceful life, etc. But unfortunately, they became more involved only after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, only after 2022. Because when you have peaceful life, you don't often think about the war. Thinking about war is inconvenient. We
Yeah,
don't
for
think
sure.
about bad things if they don't concern us personally, like directly. We don't think about them. That's why those people, like a lot of them, of course, they cared. There were moments, a lot of times, when I would go back home on a bus, for example, and some man or woman would go, "Thank you very much for your service," all of a sudden. And I would be like stunned, like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, this is something different, right?
Yeah, but generally nobody cared much. There were comments like, "You're stupid. Why are you serving? Like, what's the point? Why can't you do something better? You know,
Yeah.
you have like education. Why don't you do something else?" And there were times when I would be at a position with 3 or 4 other guys at a position, which means that generally you have like 4 hours a day to sleep, not more,
Yeah.
because there's no other man. And I would ask myself, like, where are all the good guys, who say that they care about Ukraine so much? Where are they? But everything changed in 2022, fortunately or unfortunately. And the fact is, in many situations, in many cases, we unfortunately have to learn the hard way. But sometimes it's the only way.
It kind of, it's completely different in Russia right now because Russia is the one attacking. But it seems like Russia is going kind of through that phase, just right now because of the war coming inside of Russia, and some people, because there's tons of different videos that I saw that the Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk region, for example, they show people videos about, on Russian television, the TV presenters saying that they should carpet bomb the whole Kursk region. Well, the Ukrainian occupied part of Kursk region to get all the Ukrainian soldiers out of there. Nobody is talking about the Russian civilians living there, and the Russian civilians are like, "Oh my God, the government doesn't care about us." And I'm like, "You only found out that now, really?"
Welcome to the real life.
Yeah, and it's the only way to understand is when it actually comes through because the Russian propaganda machine is really powerful. Now, a lot of people
Yeah.
don't understand this. They say, how comes people don't stand up in Russia? But the the first problem is that the propaganda machine is really good. And I'm not saying it that, I admire it, I hate it, but in a sense of brainwashing people, it's doing an amazing job. It's like an A plus job. And the second thing is why people are not standing up, even if there's some people who are against all of this, and I'm pretty sure there must be at least 20 or 30% of the Russian population who are against this war. If they try to stand up against this, the Russian special services are good at one thing: finding out who want to do a protest. Even if it's a peaceful one, everybody is going to be brought into police buses and thrown into a prison cell for like 15 days. Or now with the new laws, I don't even know what's going on. They could be going to prison for a few years because it could be discrediting the Russian army or discrediting the Russian government. And I'm like, what is this? Where's the freedom of speech? So that's kind of a little answer of that. And what do you think about the grip on the Russian citizens? Because there must be at least somebody who's against, but they can't stand up. What do you think about people like that? What would you do if you were in Russia, for example, if you were a Russian citizen?
Two things. On one hand, of course, as a former protester at the Revolution of Dignity, we know that if you want to achieve something, you have to fight, and sometimes you have to sacrifice. Sometimes you have to take like wooden shields that don't stop bullets, even smaller calibers, and go against armed goons. And sometimes you have to sacrifice, sometimes you have to die. But this is the only way you can protect freedom and democracy. On the other hand, I wasn't born in Russia. That's why it's really hard to talk on behalf, of Russians.
Yeah.
Like we were not born in China. That's why we can hardly understand what Chinese people think. And
Yeah.
if we were born in China, of course, I think we would have a different opinion and different mentality, probably. But we were lucky to be who we are today and where we are today, in my personal opinion.
That's a good answer, And there are a few theories saying that if Russians actually started protesting and doing all that stuff back in 2014, 2015, 2018, it could have been successful because the Russian I'm pretty sure there's a special unit for all the protesting because I remember when I would drive up to Moscow and drive past the streets where there were supposed to be protests, you would have like thousands and thousands of police units all over the place, getting prepared to arrest everybody. I just think it should have been done earlier when the Russian government wasn't so prepared. Because right now, they're 100% prepared to, even if you have an idea in your mind, they will already know that something is going to happen, So it's like, because you see a lot of YouTubers, I check out a few Ukrainian YouTubers and stuff like that. And a lot of people are like, you should go against. But it's like, you can't even gather people now because everybody is just so frightened for their life that nobody's gonna come and you're gonna be the only one who comes and you're gonna get beaten up, It's like
you need to
yeah.
have a plan, bro. Whenever you're doing anything, you need to have a plan, and you need to have a planned result that you want to reach.
Yeah.
If you want to protest, you need to understand what kind of result do you want to achieve and what will be after achieving that goal, right? So going and protesting just because will lead you to being thrown into jail, and you will end up like Navalny, for example.
Yeah, peaceful protests don't work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why peaceful protests in the country where regime that rules this country despises democracy and despises freedom of speech, those protests will not work. That is something we understood after the protests at Bolotnaya, which failed. And all
was
those
that
attempts.
during the mobilization?
No. Back in those days when there was Navalny.
Oh, yeah.
When Navalny was making selfies from the Avtozak. That's when we understood that protests in a totalitarian country will not work. You need other measures and things like armed insurgent movement or whatever. But like peaceful protests, come on. In Ukraine, we also understood that during three different revolutions in 2001, 2004, and 2013. So, I can understand it from this position. Also, you need some kind of power that will take responsibility for that. And currently, the power that was supposed to take responsibility for that is dispersed all around the European Union.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the so-called Russian opposition. To me, the only guys that can do anything, they are currently fighting already in Kursk as well, by the way. And I'm talking about the Siberian Battalion, I'm talking about the Legion Freedom for Russia, and I'm talking about the Russian Voluntary Corps, those three units that are fighting for the Ukrainian armed forces and fight against the Russian invaders. Those guys show that you can only fight against a totalitarian regime this way, and this is the proper way. You cannot
So the
fight.
proper way is to fight like the proper way with guns against a totalitarian regime, because the peaceful stuff doesn't work, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are
It's interesting.
cases when they can work, but not with Putin. I think you will agree with me.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have a really interesting question. Did, did you have or do you have any Russian friends that currently live in Russia? You don't have to name names or anything. It's like a yes or no answer, kind of like that. So you're not, giving out any names or putting anybody in danger or anything like that.
I had two friends on Facebook before I quit Facebook, and I cannot be happier about quitting Facebook. But I had two friends before the full-scale invasion. We didn't talk much, but I remember when the invasion started, and we were on our way to Hostomel before the very first battle in Hostomel took place. I was on my way and I received a message from a guy from Vladivostok. Again, I never saw his photos. I don't know, I don't remember even his name much, but I remember that he was in Vladivostok, I believe. And he said, I'm really, really sorry about all this shit as a citizen of this country. I'm like, dude, don't worry about that. But of course, you owe me beer for this shit.
I see. Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, beer 100%. And I really, really hope that this fucking regime and this big ridiculous shit called Putin's Federation will also collapse. So that was probably my only conversation with like Russians over the past 10 years.
Oh, wow. And another question is, this is actually quite interesting because I have a lot of Ukrainian friends that actually still live in Russia, and they are against what Russia is doing, but they're still living there. Have you ever been to Russia before, like at any time of your life, even if it was you were a kid or whatever?
In 2012, I've been to Russia, to Moscow. I was sent by my TV channel because in Moscow back in 2012, they had some kind of forum for communication specialists. And I was sent there because I wanted to learn experience from companies like Sberbank, their communication service, Odnoklassniki, like different big, giant Russian...
Big Russian, companies.
Yeah, companies. Generally, I wasn't impressed for some reason, like whatever they had, whatever cases they could present on that forum, they were not really impressive. What impressed me was the price of a tea in hotel, which was freaking ridiculous. It was like, my God, like $40, like something like that, like some ridiculous price for like a kettle of tea in the hotel. And I was like, what the freaking, like, what is this? Like, why? Why it's so expensive? So generally, yeah, that was the only time I've been to Russia. I remember I was leaving, I was entering my train, and this lady that was, I think she was from the border guards, she decided to check my backpack, and she started like, like she shoved her hand in there and started like surfing among my dirty underwear, dirty
Oh yeah,
socks, like
classical.
looking for some
Yeah.
shit. Yeah. So that was the only moment.
But in general, back in 2012, this was before anything happened. What did you think of Moscow as a city in 2012? You know? Like, what was it? Did you enjoy it? Did you find it nice? Or was it horrible? Or, just an honest opinion, you know?
Not much, because like I never had this dream of going to Russia, and generally never kind of thought about it. I
Oh,
liked Kiev so much because
yeah.
I grew up there. I know so many cool places, and to me, Kiev as a big city, with its skyscrapers and parks and sleeping neighborhoods, it was just so beautiful and so romantic and dangerous at times. I grew up in like this criminal neighborhood, one of the worst in Kiev actually.
Yeah.
Now it's absolutely different because starting from early 2000s, I don't know about Russia, but starting from early 2000s, the gopniks almost completely disappeared from my area, for example. You
Yeah.
can hardly find them in any other city because they either like went to jail or died from like OD.
Yeah.
But in my neighborhood, that was notorious for its gopniks. They all disappeared, like completely. Now it's
Was
one of
it
the safe.
Gopniks or was it like, the mafia type of stuff, during the 90s?
There were both because there was this district where one of the mafiosos, Savlohov, was killed. I don't remember, using RPG or like
Oh,
AK.
wow.
He died. Yeah, it was a neighboring neighborhood. So there were all kinds of people. There were gopniks and mafioso. Like gopniks, the wannabe gangsters, and
Yeah.
mafioso, like legit gangsters.
Yeah.
So we had both. And as I said, majority of gopniks, they're either in jail or died from different causes. And all the mafiosos I knew, they also died for some reason. Like, I have no idea. Now you walk outside, you can see all kinds of mamas with baby wagons, kids going to or from school, like teenagers doing whatever the fuck teenagers are doing nowadays,
Yeah.
watching TikToks. But it's really, really safe. I'm not sure about Russia. I don't know if like Gopnik culture disappeared much there.
Oh, yeah, it did for sure. It disappeared, but obviously, if you go somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you'd probably have a few of those Gopniks wearing the Adidas, and it's pretty much anywhere in the whole post-Soviet countries. You would have that one town or a few towns where you would have some, I don't know, ill to the head, or I don't know, somebody knocked them with a hammer in the head and they just become gopniks, whatever. But I think every country has gopniks if you think about it, because when I lived in Ireland, I got mugged by Irish gopniks. So, you have them everywhere all around the world. They're just
Oh
kind
shit.
of hidden away
How
somewhere.
how did it happen? Can you tell me?
Oh, I found it absolutely disgusting because when I was in Ireland, and I'm always honest, I love Russia, I hate the government, but when I lived in Ireland, I always wanted to go back to Russia. Like, I was like, I want to go back to Russia. It's my home, my friends are there, that's where all the fun is happening. Well, the typical thing, you're away from family. And I used to go to like judo or something like that. And I was returning from that, and it was like literally my first or second lesson. I was around 13 years old, and I was walking with a backpack, and in my backpack, I had a wallet. And I was standing at a bus stop where there's literally around 30 people around the place, right? And those two or three Irish gopniks just surround me. One of them hugs me and like starts kind of like kind of choking me a little bit. And the other one takes the wallet. And all of the guys around the bus stop sees this, and nobody says a single word. And I was like, what the heck? Because, if something like that happened in Russia, somebody would be like, "What the fuck are you doing? It's a kid," and get him off or something like that. And there, everybody was just like, "We're not gonna be involved in this." And I was like, "Flipping heck!" And I was just so glad that I only had like €2 in that wallet. So I was like, "All right." And I called the police, right? And they came 2 hours later on a bicycle. And I'm like, "Are you joking? Like how I nearly got killed here, right? And you come in a bicycle 2 hours later." And I'm like, "So how are you gonna find my wallet after cycling for 2 hours? It's probably somewhere thrown away." It was just a horrible experience. I was like, what the heck? So that's a little story about that. So it happens everywhere, no matter what country. Every country, I think, has its good and bad people, no matter what.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. Also, every country has like good and bad cops.
Oh, yeah.
That's for sure. Some of them are. I was at a checkpoint. There were a bunch of checkpoints around Kiev, and we were helping GAI, GIBDD, only in
Yeah.
Ukraine.
So traffic police.
The traffic police, we are so happy that those fuckers disappeared in like 2015 after the reform, because they were the most corrupted shit you could find in the police. The most corrupted people, we called them pistachios, because when they were wearing like armored vests, they would not close.
Yeah, because they were fat, right?
Yeah, and they were taking bribes that, like, oh my god. And we, as like new cops and like volunteers, we hated them. And I remember there was this dude who liked to talk shit about like a revolution of dignity. And he was like, I have friends like everywhere. I have friends in Russia. I have friends in Donbass, etc. And sometimes they go visit me. Sometimes they bring some weapons. And I'm like sitting there, and this fucker tells me that shit directly in my face. I'm like, well, thank you so much for this information. So, because I consider myself good cop, those guys eventually disappeared. And I cannot be liar, because it was a proper thing to fucking report those bastards. So that's the thing.
So do you think after this reform of the Ukrainian traffic police, did the corruption go to a zero, or do you think there's still some cops that are, kind of, you speed a little bit, or I don't know, you get caught driving and you had a few beers? Do you think it's still a possibility to kind of, give them a bit of money and just drive off? Or do you think like everybody is just a good cop now that doesn't like touch money whatsoever?
So first of all, the personnel improved, the quality of personnel and their training improved big time,
That's
because
good.
the national police in Ukraine, the patrol police, it was trained by different people from United States, from Canada, from the UK, from Germany, by the way. And German cops, I think they're like the best, because
Yeah.
they're German cops. So their quality improved big time. So from being like the worst possible shit you can imagine, they became like the police that you can find in any other European country.
Oh, that's
And
good.
speaking of corruption, I think the situation is like in any other European country, except Germany, of course, because German police, like those guys are tough.
Yeah. That's quite interesting. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's just, when I was in Ireland, I was a kid. I don't know why I was doing this, but I used to watch a bunch of Ukrainian YouTubers that would have like a camera, and they would get like pulled over, and they would like fight against corruption through video, and they would like screw the cops over. Sometimes they would, a mummy like from a pyramid, they would wrap themselves like this, and then when they get stopped by the police, the guy would give like a women's license to the cop, and he'd be like, "This is my license," and they're like, "Can you take this off?" And he's like, "No, I can't. I have a medical condition." And they would be just screwing with them. It was like the best videos ever. But unfortunately, one of the guys that was like the main guy doing those videos, I think he cross somebody's path higher up in the police, and he had to like run away, and he like asked for political asylum in the States or something like that. And then obviously he couldn't do those videos because he's in the US, and but they were the best. I will send you the link after. It's just hilarious.
Bro, I met those guys myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I met those guys myself, and I can tell you that
It was
99%
one
case.
bald guy, right?
Yeah, there was one guy. There was Дорожный, either Дорожный контроль or Дорожный
Yeah,
патруль.
one of them. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. One of them later became a military. By the way, they were fighting
really?
in Mariupol in 2014. Andriy Dzindza. He's a legit. He's a great guy. But there are other guys who literally wanted to have hype to have like good video for social media to earn money.
Yeah.
And it sucked because they would never show you how exactly the conflict would start. They would only show like the result, and they were good at provoking. So like when you serve as a cop, and when you meet people like that, people who would stand and shout in your face like you're a fucking fascist and a pig and a faggot, what do you do? And like you learn how to keep yourself cool and under control, in any situation, because there were such situations in my experience as well.
Yeah.
Many times, many different people. So one thing that you should always remember is that people are very, very different. And when you meet like 10 absolutely ridiculous people, like 10 different criminals, psychopaths, rapists, drug dealers, whatever, like during the day, and they all pretend to be like sweet persons, until you check their data, check like their connections and stuff. The only thing after that is to remind yourself that the world is full of beautiful and decent people that will always help you, and that you should care for, because there is this thing in any service that is called professional deformation, which is when you serve as a police, eventually you turn into a a sociopath eventually, because you forget that the very reason you joined police forces is to help people. And that is something that you should always remember when you serve. And this must always serve as a reminder to you.
Yeah, if everybody would have followed it would be very good. Now, I actually have it's still a hot topic, I think, but what do you think is going to happen to Kursk region? It's actually a very interesting topic, because this is like a huge breakthrough. This is something different. Russia was attacking Ukraine, trying to move. And then suddenly, in a day, the Ukrainians were like, you know what? We're in Kursk. And everybody's like, what the heck is going on? This is different. And from what I understand, I'm not a military professional. I'm not an economist. I'm none of that. I'm just an ordinary guy trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And from what I understand, they captured that piece and they kind of dug themselves in to defend. But what do you think is the reason of doing this? And what do you think the future plans could be for all of this?
The reason is very obvious, is to stretch Russian forces, because when Kursk region was incurred by the armed forces of Ukraine, first thing Russians did was they sent, first of all, Kadyrovites ran away. Okay, they lied to everybody that like there's they missed Ukrainian forces. They went, the other way. So Kadyrovites ran away. A lot of conscripts were captured as prisoners of war. And first thing Putin did was he sent Petnashka battalion. And Petnashka is not a Russian regular unit. It's a hybrid unit that was operating in Donbass since 2014. I know Petnashka well because, or was it Cheburashka? Not quite sure. I think it was Petnashka that tried to take control over Mariinka, and they got fucked. So they thought they were successful. They went deeper into Mariinka, and then they got basically encircled and destroyed by artillery, and then filtered, like cleared completely by my battalion and the National Guard. So I know them well. They are not regular army. Yes, they have like experience, but they don't have what regular troops have. And they were sent to Kursk from Donbass. And they were fucked on their way. So after that, like regular regiment was sent, which was also fucked by HIMARS on its way. And later, Putler realized that they have a problem there. So they started stretching troops from the directions of Kherson, Zaporizhia, from those areas, and some troops from Kharkiv, but not from the Donbass, except for that Petnashka. Idiots. Oh. So the main idea was to stretch Russian forces because they had a lot of personnel concentrated on their main attack direction, which was towards Vovchansk, Kharkiv region, Kupiansk, Pokrovsk, Kurachovo, those areas. And as for the future, I don't think that anybody will be, changing the borders because anyways, Ukrainians respect international borders. We never say that, Przemysl belongs to Ukraine. Fuck that shit. We have our own borders. We respect international borders.
So you're not going to be having people in Kursk vote if they want to be a republic of themselves or to join Ukraine.
We joke about it. We joke about it a lot. Sometimes in the videos I'm saying Kursk Oblast of Ukraine, but everybody understands that it's a joke. We are not like orcs who like to organize sham referendums in different foreign lands and take those territories. We like to joke about that shit. Ukrainians generally have this very, very twisted sense of dark humor.
Oh, I see. And do you think, because I heard some specialists in the Ukraine-Russia matter, because I think most people are not specialists, in my own opinion, because, before all of this, they could have been, doing something completely different, like racing cars, and then the next day they're talking about, the front line is moving and they're using this and that. But some of them are saying that this can be used as an exchange coin to exchange some piece of land. Do you think that is true, or what is the story about that?
I think it's possible. I think it's plausible because the incursion of Kursk Oblast was not made for taking the territory. The territory was not the goal. The goal that all Ukrainians have right now is to remove Putin and remove the degenerates that rule Russia. That is like our, not even the goal, that is like dream. Our mission is to protect Ukraine and stay united, return our borders, but our dream is to remove the degenerates, and which I hope that is shared by people like you and a lot of Russians
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
for sure, yeah.
But taking Kursk, like the goal was not to grab this territory. The goal was to stretch the troops that were highly concentrated on the main directions of the terrorist attack right now, which was partially successful. Because I remember the guys from like Kharkiv direction, from Pokrovsk direction, they were saying that at least for a while the shellings became like less intense, the attacks became less intense. So I think it was partially successful. Eventually, of course, if Russia remains in one piece, of course, it will return to Russia. Maybe it will be used to exchange, but who knows? I cannot predict. And even though I'm a military, but, I like to talk from my level. And my level
Yeah.
is, unfortunately or unfortunately, I'm not a general, I'm a humble captain, and there's only so much I can tell from what I see on like operational level, and even less on the strategic level.
That's great, because you're actually in that kitchen, doing the military stuff, and you have an idea. That's why I don't even get into the military stuff, because I have no idea what's going on, how it's going on. I sometimes check on, how everything is moving, but even if I look at that, I have no idea what's going on. So that's why I rather talk about this stuff I kind of understand rather than some people, they just find some information, literally read it out from somewhere and give it as their own. So that's great, that's really cool that you're kind of going through. I've had this question which is really interesting. Do you think that after somehow all of this is over, do you think it's possible that Russians and Ukrainians can somehow, start traveling forth and back and, kind of start living a normal life when people are not going to be hating each other? Because I can imagine there's probably a lot and a lot of Ukrainians that hate Russians. And, I understand because, you have literally them attacking you, and some people don't care if it's a guy who's against or not. It's like, I don't even want to look your way. Because there are people like that. I've met people like that, and obviously it happens. Because, you're going to be angry. If something like that happened to me, I'd be angry as well. So do you think there's ever going to be in our lifetime where, you know, some Russians can go to Kiev to have a few beers or something like that? Do you think that's actually possible, or do you think it's unrealistic that it would be so quick?
It depends, bro, because after the war is finished, what Ukrainians expect? Ukrainians expect first reparations to be paid because we lost a lot of lives for nothing, because they were not supposed to die. People
Obviously,
in
yeah. I mean,
people in Ukraine were not supposed to die. Our houses were not supposed to be destroyed. Our schools were not supposed to be bombed. It was not supposed to happen. And we expect reparations to be paid. We expect people in Russia to apologize for this. One reason why people react the way they react towards Russians, I tell you this. There's Olympic Games, and there's Ukrainian sportsmen, and then there's Russian sportsmen. And Russian sportsmen, which by the way usually supported by like Russian Ministry of Defense, they go on tour around like Russian military units, to motivate personnel and stuff. Like for example, there's this like a sprinter, from Russia. She sees a Ukrainian sprinter and she goes to her and she's like, let's make a picture, and show everybody, like, that Russians and Ukrainians are together. She will be like, fuck you. Because before talking to me, first thing you need to say, so I could identify you, is that you're fucking sorry for what your country is doing. That is the first thing you should say. So after that, I would identify you as a proper human being. And only after that, I will consider like what to do, like taking selfie or something. That's why, why I respect you is because you made your position clear. With your videos, with your statements, with your messages, with your channel, basically. But there's a lot of Russians who don't understand, like, why when they want to talk to somebody, like Ukrainians or something, they have such bad reactions. Well, that is the thing. Like, if you want to talk to Ukrainians now, you have to think about this, because a lot of Ukrainians, millions of them, are now seeking for refuge outside Ukraine. They lost their houses, the whole life that you have with your car, your apartment, hot water in the
one
sink.
rocket, it's gone.
Yeah, it can disappear in the blink of an eye, and you have like a bunch of ruins and dead kids, and what do you do after that? So they must understand this, and but again, nobody explained it to anybody. So that is one thing. Returning to your question, I believe that for this very reason, there will be a lot of hate for extended period of time. But judging from cases of Japan, United States, Germany, France, even like Poland and Ukraine, I'm sure that there is a chance.
Yeah. I actually have a quick, interesting story. When I escaped the mobilization, because I was not, you're never sure. I kind of knew that I probably wouldn't get a letter, but there's a chance you could. So I rather not take a chance and leave. And that's why I went to Turkey.
Yeah.
And the second apartment I rented there was actually from a woman from Mariupol. And I come over there and I was like, this was the time where I didn't understand how a Ukrainian person is going to react to me or anything like that. And I was literally driving on Russian license plates. So I pulled in there and I was like, oh, hello, hello. And the first thing she said, she's like, don't worry about this. We're here because we have the same problem. And I was like, oh, thank you very much. This is awesome. And it was like the best person I rented an apartment from. No problems at all. It was great, and I really enjoyed the fact that a person understands straight away and probably sees, because, before I went there was a lot of cases when the actual war started, there were like Ukrainians and Russians would go up to each other cars and stab the wheels and stuff like that. It was going crazy. So I was like, yeah, I didn't understand how it would go, because I'm just like, what if somebody's going to stab my wheels or beat me up or something like that? But it ended up being fine, because at the end of the day, I was walking out of around my streets, and you would see like a Russian license plate, a Ukrainian license plate. Everybody would live on the same street, have fun, like have barbecues and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this could have been Russia and Ukraine together, like before all of this, driving to each other and having fun. But because of the Russian leadership, this is just impossible, which is very unfortunate, because I actually wanted to drive around from Moscow through Ukraine and to Ireland in a car. But unfortunately, that's not possible. Even if I would have shipped my car from Russia, or drove through Belarus or something, with a Russian passport, I wouldn't be able to go to Poland, because Poland is pretty sure Poland doesn't actually even give you a visa if you're Russian to go in. Nope. So I've heard stories, people who want to get a US visa. They have to fly to like some European country that gives you a visa and then drive through the border to Poland and like sneak into the American embassy to get a visa, you know? So it's definitely a crazy situation.
Yeah, I tell you this, for example, in like The Hague or in Rotterdam, if you want to buy a Ukrainian flag, oh, that is a cat. Oh my
Yep,
God.
that's my cat right there. He always chills around with me. I'm gonna show him a
Well,
little bit here.
now this podcast has a chance. Now it
Yeah,
won't be
definitely.
as awful. Yeah. Uh, so in Rotterdam, for example, when you want to buy a Ukrainian flag, you go to a Russian store
Oh, that's cool.
because because a lot of Russian people there, a lot of owners of stores, they also have a lot of Ukrainian products, and I would say 90% of them support Ukraine. Of course, there's a chance. Another thing that Ukrainians hate, for example, in Russians, like generally, is, this feeling of imperialism, which is very, very, I would say, cunning. Because when Russians say that we and Ukrainians are brothers, well, technically, Ukrainians don't care much about it because Ukrainians were occupied by like Bolsheviks for 70 years. We have a lot of that brotherhood.
Oh, screw the communists.
Yeah, we're fed up with it. That's why we believe in brotherhood between good people, not between brotherly nations, as Putler or like Stalin like to say. That's another thing. And what's the name of the cat, by the way?
This is Ponchik right here. I have
Oh,
two cats that I brought from Russia with me. I would never leave them anywhere. They have to fly with me. He's just chilling around. He always chills around like this. When I do videos or live streams, everybody sees him here. He just likes chilling around the place.
well,
Yeah.
he's in good company now because
Yeah, definitely.
so far I like this stream. We can say like shit, we can say pussy, we can drink, smoke.
Yeah,
I don't
welcome
know.
to Sanction Ivan. This is how we do it here, you know? And it's great. I think this is going to be interesting. I actually have like a few more questions, but they're just, it's really interesting because a lot of people want to get to know you a little bit more. A lot of people probably, they probably don't watch like every single video sometimes. So it's like in one video, they could be washing dishes or doing something and listening to this. This is really great. You know what? This is an interesting question. I have no idea about American politics. I've never lived in the United States, so I don't have an answer to this. I would like to hear from you. Do you think that the US elections are going to affect Ukraine in a way? Do you think that it affects or it doesn't affect?
I think, of course, it can affect not only Ukraine but the world order because the United States are the one of the biggest allies of European NATO countries, and for example, one of the candidates, right, said that he will consider quitting NATO. So it's a big future problem, not only for Ukraine, but also for the rest of the world. Again, the world will have to find the hard way. Yeah, to find to go to the place where they will get enlightened the hard way, unfortunately. But from what we see now, it seems that is the only way. But again, who knows? Because I still believe that decent people will prevail. I believe that there's much more decent people in the world than there are not so decent people.
All right, that's an interesting perspective. So it definitely will affect one way or another. So from what I know, there's two candidates, and in your opinion, will affect in a good way and one in a bad way, right? For Ukraine, or do you think it doesn't matter because there's going to be a way to communicate to them, or how does this work in your opinion? Just because you're from Ukraine, I'm trying to understand. Obviously, you
Um,
might not know, I'm not. I don't know how you're informed about the American politics because I'm not, and it's just interesting to know from an actual citizen. You know.
I'm looking at the messages, and if one candidate goes that Putin is a criminal and Ukraine was invaded and we have to help it, and the other cannot even tell if he wants Ukraine to win or not, which I can understand because like all the Russian infrastructure of bots is supporting this candidate right now. So everything is obvious to me. There's a lot of deluded people, unfortunately, who say that if one specific candidate wins, then the war will like stop in one day. Yes, it will stop. Only Ukraine will stop existing as well. That is again like I consume messages. I analyze what I hear and see from the media, from those people, and currently it looks to me like that one of the candidates has a strong position regarding Ukraine, regarding Ukraine's right to defend itself, and there's another dude who has a lot of delusions and who doesn't understand anything at all about army, about military planning, about resources, about logistics, anything. So it's very, very obvious to Ukrainians as well. I think American elections will definitely change something. Um, I have hope that it will change something for better, but we will see. As I mentioned today in the chat, it's like in that movie, everything will be good or not, then everything will be
Yeah.
bad.
I guess we'll live to learn, right? We'll live to
Yeah,
learn. We'll
yeah.
see how it plays out and what good or bad it gives us. That's
Yeah,
interesting. I just
the only problem, bro, is that the world is currently not as motivated to defend itself against the hybrid Russian warfare, not as motivated as Russians waging this warfare. That is the thing because, like FSB, Russian strategic communication agencies, they are very, very dedicated and motivated to destroy the Western democracies. They're very dedicated. And Western democracies, they are very hesitant. They still don't understand what awaits, and they will learn, but unfortunately, the hard way.
yeah. That's an interesting perspective. Thank you very much for that. Um okay, so another few questions actually, because this is actually quite a long one, but it's really interesting. I'm actually getting a lot of insights, from, I can call it the other side, because it's really interesting.
It's the
But
same side, bro.
yeah, it's the same side, but you know what I mean. It's like, I have a red passport, you have a blue passport, so it's interesting in a way because, I was basically raised in Ireland, but I still know how Russians are and what Russians do. And talking to a Ukrainian that has been involved in all of this, I just find it interesting to myself. It's great to learn new things and to actually ask some questions which might have never been asked before because everybody is just really involved into asking the same questions all the time, you know? Um, Interesting question. Imagine this: the war is over, for example, right? And like you said, in a perfect scenario, Russia is paying reparations. Would you think that you would, for example, if you had friends in Moscow, would you consider of taking a flight there to hang out with a few of your friends when it's a democratic Russia with a good government and none of that bullcrap that's going on right now. It's becoming more of a European country or westernized country. Would you consider something like that to meet your buddies there? For example, I'm
Hard to
there, right? And I'm like, Starsky, fly over, let's have a beer, Democratic Russia, let's celebrate.
psychologically it could be difficult, of course,
Definitely.
but in the next 50 years, who knows? Because
Yeah.
again, Japan invaded Pearl Harbor. They destroyed uh, like the core of the American fleet. They killed a lot of American guys, and over the years of the war that followed, uh, there were there was a lot of death on both sides. There was nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Uh, many thousand people died in Japan, civilians, and like 80, almost 80 years after that, the world changed. Same with Germany. Like in 40s, everybody hated Germany so much. But nowadays, Germany is the most democratic and the most open and friendly nation you can find in Europe, I think. And I've been to the different countries. I love other countries in Europe as well, but Germans, they are just so nice, even when they don't smile, but they're still nice, because they don't smile because they're Germans. But there's, a lot of them smile actually.
So, do
Um,
you
so so I think that everything is possible. Again, if we look into perspective, like if today I was told, "Do you want to have a tour in Moscow?" I would say, "Are you fucking nuts?" Like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
no, yeah. But after years, who knows? Everything changed. Time heals. Also, nobody wants to live next to, like, this atrocious terroristic totalitarian neighbor forever. Nobody. And eventually I think that everybody would like to have like proper partners and neighbors, whoever they are. So that's a normal thing. I remember back in the days, people asked me this when we had anti-terrorist operation at the Donbass, and people asked, okay, let's imagine that we have reintegrated Donbass back. How will it make you feel? Because you will be walking down the same street with a dude who was fighting against you as a separatist. So we didn't think much about it. But I think, after the war is finished, I think the healing process will not take a lot of time. Back in like 70s, 80s, there are still cases, for example, when Polish people were very much biased against Germans, for example. Even in 2000s, I remember cases like that in 2000s. Or Americans biased towards Japanese, things like that. But time goes on, things change, time heals, and we will see. I think no matter what happens, but Putin's regime is not eternal, it will collapse. Because the system that is based on violence and lies, it cannot survive. It can survive just so much. And in the end, the collapse will be horrifying for everybody, including people that were brainwashed and fooled in the Western countries, because the results, the consequence will be very, very much devastating and horrifying. But in the end, everything will return back to normal, and everything will be fine. Or not.
Wow, that's very interesting. And you know what? The last question of today's podcast. Imagine this, right? Just imagine. and somehow you appear in the same room as Vladimir Putin, but you can't do anything to him, right? Physically or anything like that. What question would you ask him? Just like one question. What do you think you would ask him? You would appear right now.
Man, this is such a torture, and I cannot do anything. Oh my god! Like, better throw me like in a, I don't know.
I know, but this is interesting, you know? It's really
Oh my!
interesting. Like, what question would you ask? This is like, I know it's you wouldn't want to do it, but you imagine the scenario that happens. You somehow teleport into his bunker, and he's just sitting there, and you're sitting in front of him in a 5 meter long table, and you gotta ask him one question.
Holy shit! Oh my god!
Definitely a strong one, right?
That's. I have no idea. Like, there's literally not much I would like to know from this person. Like, I am not even sure that I would like to
there
talk to.
there must be like one question you would like to be answered from him. Just one. Imagine this. One question.
Um, I would probably ask, that horse that he kissed on the photo. Did he fucking die? Because remember, there was this photo of the horse that stuck between the trees, and then Putin kissed him, or something, like one of those
No, I
staged.
never have. I'd have to find it.
Yeah, you gotta check it. It's funny as hell. So I would probably ask about that horse, because that the life of that horse bothers me much more than Putin. I would ask him whether he prefers like a single cell in The Hague, or he likes to stay in a group with big hairy men, or something like that. Probably.
I see. That's interesting way to ask a question. Well, thank you very much for being on my first podcast. You know, I think this has been very interesting. I've asked you probably not as many questions as I would like, because I probably have a million questions, but to keep this at least 1.5 hours, I try to kind of slow down on my questions. And I mean, thank you very much. This is awesome. And the fact that, I find it really interesting that we, kind of went together and did this. This is just something really cool. I find it amazing.
Absolutely, because we're on the same side. Plus, you're recruited now, anyways, and by the security service of Ukraine. It's a great experience. We were talking about the twisted Ukrainian humor. I
Yeah,
remember when I called you to join my stream. I received this interesting commentary from a viewer, because there was a case in Hurghada where a Russian tourist was eaten by a tiger shark,
oh wow,
and
yeah.
I made a tattoo, like I have a tattoo of a shark on my shoulder, and after we had a stream, one of the viewers said, "Dude, actually, like that could be Ivan." So, bro, don't go fucking swimming, okay? Tell me when and where you are.
Don't worry, I'm already hired by CIA, and I did swim in Egypt, I think like 7 or 8 months ago, and I just found it frightening. You swim in the Red Sea, and you put some goggles on, and you see it like 50 billion poisonous fish just swimming around. I'm like, how do people swim in this? And they just swim out real quick. It's just death
I
sentence around
I
there.
have thalassophobia. I remember we were swimming. Was it in Turkey or was it in Italy? I don't remember. I was a small kid, but I was like swimming in the sea. We were like jumping from a ship, Okay, and I saw this jellyfish, like giant jellyfish with
Oh
its
wow.
tentacles
Ugh.
going down into the deep. And you have never peed in the water, no?
No, I try my best not to. I try to use the toilet, you know.
Yeah, so I realized that sometimes you do. And after that, I don't swim that far. Like, that shit is sketchy as fuck.
You know why I don't pee in the water? Simple answer. Because when I was a kid, I heard some guy in Egypt say if you pee in the water, the fishes and the sharks or whatever sense it and they start swimming towards you. So
Oh.
I rather not risk my life doing that, you know.
Don't, yeah, okay. You can swim, but not pee. I
Yeah.
promised my viewers.
Well, guys, thank you very much for watching this podcast. Make sure to check out Starsky's YouTube channel. Is great. You can get some really cool information about what do you do? Tell us a bit.
Mostly I'm reporting about Ukraine. I have a lot of streams with my absolutely incredible community because I have 400,000 not just subscribers, but decent people and true friends. To me, they're a family. And I'm blessed to have such a big and amazing family, I think. And I also dedicate my channel to fighting disinformation. And I have a side channel called VibesUkraine, where I'm posting different stories about Ukraine, mysteries, and all kinds of conspiracies that I don't believe.
Wow, that's really interesting. So why do you post them if you don't believe them?
Because they're cool. Like, I don't believe in stuff like ghosts and aliens, but I am the one who wants to believe. Like, literally,
Oh,
when I was a teenager, I would spend my time roaming around like cemeteries with a recorder,
oh
trying
wow.
to find a ghost or record a message from the other side. It's called EVP. And like, never happened. I want to believe, but I don't. But this stuff is attractive because generally people like to um, see or hear about things, good storytelling about some chilling shit. um, Stephen King once said, we have like terrorists, we have wars, we have all kinds of crazy stuff. Why do we even read things like horrors, like horror stories? Well, that's the reason, because we need something to escape, we need something to distract ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I do it. And also, another reason is that those stories primarily come from Ukraine and they're about Ukraine. So I make viewers more acquainted with my countries as well. Not, the mainstream information, but the stories they would not find otherwise in the mainstream media.
Oh, that's really cool. I'll definitely check that out and also leave the link to that. Maybe we'll find some interesting ghost stories, and you never know. Maybe me and Starsky one day will buy ourselves a wagon car and we'll become the new Ghostbusters. You never know. Walking
That
around
would
with
be cool.
whatever tool you were saying, finding
Yeah,
ghosts.
a shark mobile.
Yeah, Shark Mobile. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Starsky's channel, to Starsky's second ghost channel and stories about Ukraine. Very interesting. Stay safe, everybody. Make sure to look out for everybody. And I'll see you guys in the next video.